Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our moderator. Your Excellency, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya, representatives from the Government of Kenya present, members of Diplomatic Corps, George representing our brother Brian Kagoro at the Open Society Foundation, my younger brother from the African Union, Dr. Roslyn from the National Commission on Human and People's Rights, and Dr. Roslyn and Dr. Roslyn again from the National Counterterrorism Center, Professor Ben So, the UN Special Rapporteur, colleagues, heads of civil society organizations, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I bring you warm greetings from the African Commission for Human and People's Rights, and particularly from the chairperson, Honorable Remingo Ilumbu, and all the commissioners in Banjul. I am delighted to join you this morning in Nairobi, the green city in the sun, at the opening ceremony of the Human Rights and Social Justice Conference of 2024, whose theme is Human Rights and Counter-Terrorism, a timely and critically important moment for the fight against terrorism. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, today the world is confronted by many global threats, such as climate and terrorism, which our host country has had a fair share of both. Recently, Kenya witnessed one of the worst climate disasters, and I would like to start by conveying the solidarity from the African Commission on Human and People's Rights to the government and people of Kenya who lost family members, were displaced, and lost property in the recent floods. Turning back to the terrorism threat, which date back to the Norfolk Hotel attack in the 70s, climaxed in the 90s during the American Embassy attack, later the Westgate and the Desvit attack in the last decade, Kenya has attested to this global threat. We gather here as the global landscape continues to grapple with the due imperatives of ensuring security and protecting fundamental human rights. This delicate balance is nowhere more urgent than in the realm of counterterrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commission at the African Human and People's Rights is acutely aware of the challenges that terrorism poses to security, peace, and human rights. Terrorism is an affront of the core values we cherish. It undermines life itself, destabilizes families and the society, and inflicts unspeakable suffering on innocent individuals. Let me start by saying that terrorism has no borders, neither are there safe havens, and so we are all vulnerable at our homes, at the workplace, in the shopping malls, at bus stops, airports, and underwater. The September 11 attack on the United States confirmed that this threat is not only faced by some poor countries somewhere, but faces all countries everywhere. I can demonstrate this very quickly because it happened when the Nairobi attack in 1998 happened. I was in my house in Kenya and watched the drama on TV as I was not working. I was on maternity leave, and my office was in Pioneer House, which was just next to the American Embassy. And so I felt very safe to be at home. And as Kenya struggled with trying to get people out of the embassy to the Kenyatta National Hospital, we all wept and they had our solidarity. However, 2 years later, I happened to be in New York, working and feeling very safe. And one morning on my way to Manhattan to my office, at the train station of the World Trade Center, the September 11 accident happened, the attack happened. I was right there at the train station, and as I was running to save my own life, at one moment I forgot whether I was in America or whether I was in Kenya. And the moral of this story is that terrorism can attack you when you are visiting, when you are at home. It can attack you when you are shopping. It can attack you when you feel very safe. Because in my case, I thought America was very safe for me at that time. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a story for another day. But let me continue by saying that we need to work hard to combat both terrorism and also counter-terrorism. While every effort should be not spared in combating this menace, our response to terrorism should also not be compromised by the very principles we seek to defend. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to say that I'll be looking at 3 issues during this conference. I'll mention them now, but I'll be dealing with them tomorrow during my presentation. The first one is the need to promote human rights and the rule of law in countering terrorism. The second one is that the fight against terrorism must be grounded in the rule of law. And the third one is that human rights are universal, inalienable, and indivisible. And so we shall be looking at this tomorrow in detail. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, we have witnessed, unfortunately, numerous instances where counter-terrorism measures have led to arbitrary detentions, extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, torture, repression of press freedoms, and holding of human rights defenders. These actions are not morally reprehensible and in breach of the obligations assumed by state parties under the AU Charter for Human Rights. They fuel grievances, undermine legitimate governance, and often provide fertile ground for further radicalization and violence. Effective counterterrorism is rooted in respect for human rights, ensuring that security measures do not become a source of further conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, the African continent has a robust framework for human rights protection. The Charter, along with other various regional instruments, provide comprehensive guidelines for upholding human rights. Additionally, international instruments such as the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, and the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy outline the obligations of states in protecting human rights while combating terrorism. State parties to the African Charter must ensure that all counterterrorism measures comply with these regional and international standards. This compliance is not only a legal obligation, but also a practical necessity. Upholding human rights in counterterrorism enhances the legitimacy of state actions and fosters cooperation with communities. For it is communities, after all, that are often the first line of defense against radicalization. When states respect human rights, they build trust and partnership with their citizens, which is essential for effective counterterrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, state parties must be vigilant to ensure that counterterrorism laws and policies are not wielded as tools of repression. This requires clear, precise definitions of terrorism that do not encompass legitimate activities such as peaceful protests and political opposition. It also necessitates robust legal safeguards to protect individuals from arbitrary detention and other abuses. Ladies and gentlemen, that notwithstanding, we know that terrorism has become an industry. It is an industry with supply and demand actors, some of whom are supposed to be part of the solution, and this begs the question. At the African Commission for Human and People's Rights, we consistently emphasize that all individuals, including those accused of the most heinous crimes, are entitled to the protection of their fundamental rights. This includes the right to legal representation, the right to be informed of charges, and the right to prompt and fair trial by an independent and impartial tribunal. Torture and ill treatment in particular are absolutely prohibited under both the regional and international law. The prohibition of torture is a preemptory norm of international law, meaning it cannot be derogated under any circumstances, including counterterrorism. State parties must ensure that their counterterrorism practices do not involve torture or other forms of ill treatment, and that allegations of such abuses are promptly and throughout investigated. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, we are confident we are confronted with persistent and evolving threats. We must do all that is under our powers to make sure that we are committed to the human rights and rule of law of our countries. Our actions must reflect values enshrined in the African Union Charter and other regional and international institutions. I call upon all state parties to the African Charter to affirm their commitment to these principles. Let us ensure that our counterterrorism measures are not effective in only protecting security, but also in upholding the dignity and rights of all individuals. By doing so, we will strengthen our societies, build trust with our citizens, and create a resilient front against the forces of terror. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights stands ready to support you in this endeavor. Together, let us forge a path that honors our shared humanity and our collective commitment to justice, peace, and human dignity. I thank you.
Too much trouble, we can get your speech and then we can make copies for participants, those who may want to read and understand what has just been said here in details. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I would like to welcome the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. They mainly work on preventing and countering violent extremism. Just to clarify that, not directly counterterrorism, preventing and countering violent extremism. And they've been working very well with civil society. If you will remember, they've done the national strategy on preventing and countering violent extremism in Kenya. They went ahead to devolve those strategies to the sub-national, that is at the county level. As we speak, all the 47 counties presently have strategies to prevent and counter violent extremism. Dr. Nyawira has been at the core of that work, and she continues to work with different actors in the efforts to ensure the country is safe by preventing and countering violent extremism. Karibu Daktari, so that you can give us your welcoming remarks. A warm welcome as she steps forward, please. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, the Professor Benso, the UN Special Rapporteur, my colleagues from the African Union, Dr. Litha